Welcome to the first ever edition of the Giants Hangout. Lance Meadow, Russ Salzberg, Howard Cross with you. We're going to be with you after each and every contest this season, breaking down the games, focusing on three different themes here or there. We'll have a few special guests along the way. Gentlemen, looking forward to getting this festivity started. So we'll focus on three different topics in the wake of this Giants-Cowboys game: play in the trenches, turnovers, and what this means for the outlook of the NFC East. It clearly was not a pretty start for the Giants' regular season as they were shut out by the Cowboys 40-0 at MetLife Stadium. That is the worst loss ever on opening day. And Russ, I want to start with you because a big theme coming into this season, of course, was the fact that with the Giants having a rookie center, mixing and matching on the offensive line, Evan Neal returning to full health, that maybe they would be in a much more competitive space to deal with the Cowboys. And you look, one team in Dallas, 7 sacks, 12 quarterback hits. The Giants, no sacks, 3 quarterback hits. That number comes front and center following Sunday night's loss.
Well, Lance and Howard, as I'm sitting in the press box last night watching this debacle, because that's what it was, it reminded me of the legendary USC coach and the first coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, John McKay. Early on, he coached them, I think, for 8 years. He was their first coach. He was asked after a bad loss, what did you think of the execution of your offense? And his answer was, I'm all in favor of it, meaning execute everybody. But the situation was, I was shocked, absolutely shocked. Listen, I'll throw the 40-0 loss out the window in terms of, when I say throw it out the window, it was just a bad, awful performance. They got punched in the mouth, and that was that. But what surprised me is exactly what you're saying. The offensive line, listen, I was there every day through training camp. I thought I watched a lot of improvement, and I just thought last night was a major step backwards. That whole game turned around on a 3rd and 2 offside, false start by Andrew Thomas. That's where it turned around because, first of all, and Howard, you could attest to this, if you're an offensive lineman, it's 3rd and 2. It's a short yardage situation. It's 3rd and 2 at the 8-yard line. You got to be on your toes. You got to be no mistakes here because at 3rd and 2 at the 8, it's 2 down territory. Dable was going to go either way. Instead, you get 3rd and 7, and all of a sudden it's a passing situation. It turned on that lousy play. Then the bad snap, then the blocked field goal. And it was like they got punched in the mouth and they couldn't recover. But Daniel Jones was running for his life. He was under siege the entire game. There was, quite frankly, a point, and I'm sure I wasn't alone with this, wondering why, as the game went on, why Daniel Jones was still in the game. And Brian Dable was asked that in the post-game press conference, and to his credit, he said, I just wanted to make something happen. I wanted, in other words, he wanted to see something good happening, and he never got to see it. And I'd also like to hear what Howard has to say on this subject. Look, I don't want people to get in fights. I don't want them to get thrown out of the game and get ejected, stuff like that. But I was getting annoyed. Can somebody do something? Can somebody punch somebody in the mouth? My quarterback is getting beaten up. He wasn't just sacked. He was beaten up the entire game. And I thought the offensive line, talk about punching in the mouth, they were punchless. They didn't do a darn thing after that first series. Not a darn thing.
Well, listen, I think a lot happened, and you have to look at it in totality. I don't think that when you're thinking about it this way, and I know the emotions are still high. First off, the Giants drove the ball all the way down the field. I thought that was good and bad at the same time. They were averaging over 6 yards a carry running the ball. The problem was averaging over 6 yards a carry. Some of those runs were designed passes, and the quarterback was under siege, like you said, Russ, the entire time. So all of a sudden, he's breaking out of the pocket. He's running. So that just increases the thing. By the time they get all the way down, this guy Parsons, I don't like to keep talking about him because the Giants probably could have drafted him. Instead, they drafted Tony. But Parsons is going to be a thorn in the Giants' side for the entire time of his career. It's just going to come back up over and over again. He was on Andrew Thomas. Andrew Thomas was nervous. He was on Neal. Neal was nervous. They put him all across the middle of the offensive line. Everybody he was on, they were shaking in their boots because the kid's a special player. So you got to see that, and you got to see mistakes starting to happen because guys were focusing on him. So you got guys paying attention to what side he's on. They're calling his number out, and all of a sudden the guy on the other side is rushing up the field and hitting the quarterback. That's what was going on during the game. And yeah, you're right. I think a lot of it hinged on the fact that when, they missed the play and then they get the kick block, again, special teams have kind of let the team down over and over again. They're going to have to find a way to address that. I don't think it's a total like wash or throwaway of everything, but Daniel Jones didn't leave the game because Daniel Jones wanted to be in the game. He kept saying to coach, I think we can get there. The only thing they could have done, I think, is that when they were down after the second score, it's just, you know what, abandon everything else. Let's run the ball. Let's make it muddy. Let's try to get ourselves some stability plays, because he didn't have a chance to throw a 3-step drop play. They were on him that quick. So when that's the case and you're looking at that, you got to start thinking about things that you can, quote unquote, slow things down and stop things. And I'm telling you, the first drive, if you go back and watch it, when they're down there right before he, quote unquote, false starts, look at the Dallas defense. Hands are on hips. Guys are looking down. They're exhausted. If they run the ball one more time, they just keep running it, Dallas might be done for the entire game. But, as chances have it, a mishandled snap, a false start, and things start to unravel really quickly.
Yeah, because Daniel Jones is scrambling, Howard, to your point, created some misdirection where Parsons may go right and Jones went left. But I think Russ brings up a good point about the penalty. And I'm curious your perspective, because I would say Andrew Thomas was called for the false start because Micah Parsons was on his side.
Yeah.
And you start thinking about, Howard, okay, I got to get an extra step on the guy, because if I don't, all of a sudden my quarterback's going to pay. So that really started the process of, and this was something Russ alluded to, the unraveling, one negative after another, and then you get obviously the field goal block.
I'm sorry, Howard, you said one thing that kind of really got my attention. And listen, when you're facing a great player, yeah, you got butterflies, whatever you want to call it, but you use the term guys on a line were nervous. And this is the NFL. I mean, can you be nervous? Should you be nervous? I mean, you're putting on your pads just like the guy across from you. But that's what kind of bothered me. There's one thing about getting beat. There's another thing about being nervous and scared. And I was wondering if the offensive line was scared.
I've played in games against Reggie White and in that group in Philadelphia when the entire line was trembling in their boots. Yes, the guys do get scared. I played against Dallas when Charles Haley was there and no one on the team could block him. Yes, they're scared. Even the coaching staff's like, okay, well, we're going to try this. You keep trying things and trying to throw things at somebody, but when you're outmatched, you're outmatched. Now, Andrew Thomas, great player, all of everything. But, he did a good job. He was doing a good job against him. After they, quote unquote, blocked the kick and they're running it back, for whatever reason, and on his soul, he thought he was going to try to, if the guy cuts back, maybe he can make a play. He's sprinting down the field. He tweaks his hamstring or something. Now he keeps playing anyway. They try to take him out of the game. He won't come out of the game, but he's tweaked. So now your best offensive lineman is a little nicked up. The rest of the guys are kind of like trying to figure it out. The center, believe it or not, was having a pretty decent game. It's just everybody else outside of those two guys were really struggling.
And they were doubling Parsons more often than not, and he was still having success under those circumstances.
At one point, they left the tight end over to try to, chip him. He threw the tight end on the ground in front of the tackle so the tackle couldn't get by him, and then he ran through. So you're dealing with a guy that has that kind of ability. You got to figure something out. And if it's me, and going forward for the rest of my career against that guy, I just run it every time I run the ball. I run it right at him. I don't care where he lines up. I run it. If he's on the sideline, I run a sweep in that direction. I'm telling you, I'm going to go after him with everything I have. The biggest body's laying on him constantly. If he's running forward, he's at the advantage. If he's trying to, lift these big guys off of him, he's at a disadvantage. And that's what I would do.
We're talking a lot about the offensive line. I got to tell you, I was also disappointed. Listen, as Brian Dable said in the post game, it stunk every which way. Coaches, players, everywhere. It was a complete team loss. But we're spending a lot of time, as we have spent a lot of time, quite a few of the past few years, on the offensive line and the woes. But I didn't think the defensive line stood up and did much yesterday. I mean, Dak Prescott pretty well was like footloose and fancy free. He wasn't under any kind of duress. Am I right?
Yeah, and kind of no. Think of it this way. The first series happens with the Giants. They drive the ball. They have like a long series. Block kick, mishandled block kick. The Giants offense goes back on the field. They run 3 or 4 plays into the series. And then I think there was an interception for a touchdown. The Giants offense goes back on the field. So the plays that you're thinking of what's happening with they're not really getting to Dak. Dak hadn't played. When Dak finally gets into the game on the first series, they don't do anything. They only really scored like I think 10 points in the first half offensively. The Giants were down because they had given up basically 2 touchdowns right away from the turnover with the field goal and the turnover, quote unquote, with the interception. So their offense didn't really play. Now in the second half, when everybody's like spirits are already down, then that's when you're hoping your defense is going to make some plays. Hey, Dak got hit 3 or 4 times, but he didn't have as many reps offensively as the Giants did.
Well, go ahead, Russ.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say Dallas wound up running the ball 30 times, to Howard's point, and they were in a position where they were playing ahead, so they were able to really emphasize the ground game. But to take Russ's point, Howard, a few steps forward, I would say, regardless of them not getting after Dak, you could say that Dallas's run game was steady enough where they didn't even disrupt that in the trenches, because of their 30 runs, only 4 of them were for negative yards or no gain. And that, to me, was a big issue to allow Dallas to just wear you down over the course specifically of the second half.
I think you're right, but you guys got to remember, it's an emotional, mental game. When you're seeing things unravel when you're on the sideline, because again, not only was Dak on the sideline and that offense on the sideline, our defense is on the sideline. So they're the hype of the game and everything's kind of getting away from them because they're 2 series down and they're 2 touchdowns down, and all of a sudden they're like, we haven't even gotten on the field yet. Right. So when these dudes start to get on the field, they're making decent plays. I think Hawkins got called with a pass interference that really wasn't a pass interference. He made a great play on the ball. He wasn't grabbing and tugging at the receiver. They just like, well, you're a rookie, no benefit of the doubt. We're going to call that. That play doesn't happen. All of a sudden, Dallas is 3 and out.
You made a good point, Howard. Listen, 2 touchdowns. It was 16-0. 2 touchdowns was scored without their offense, the Cowboys offense being on the field. But then you followed up by saying spirits were down. And that's where I'm asking you, who is it up to? I mean, spirits are down. This is pro football. This is the National Football League. It's Sunday night, national TV. You're playing your arch rivals. You got to lift your spirits up. You got to do something about it. And I'm not suggesting, because I didn't somebody kind of asked if he felt the players quit. I mean, I'm paraphrasing. And Brian Dable said, no, it was not that. They just got beat every which way. But when the spirits are down, you got to keep going. And you can see things there that maybe we can't.
It's not that you're not going. It's just like, I've beaten somebody out of their game where they played, they had to play, but you could tell I've beaten them. They were done. I've done it. Most of my career did it to guys where guys just basically they come in talking and screaming. They're hyped up. And by the second quarter, they're like, man, okay. Like, what are you doing to me? Why am I like, don't worry about it. Like, I'm not going to kill you or anything. We're going to have a good time. We're still going to have fun, but the sword is broken. They're in the fight, but they're not in the fight. Now that happens. Now, I can't explain to fans. I know fans want you to, run with your hair on fire the entire time, but it's not possible. It's raining. You're trying to get something done. You're sitting there, you're watching like, oh my God. And the, oh my, here it goes again thing starts to go through your mind. When one bad thing happens and another bad thing happens and another bad thing happens, you're like, oh, here we go again. How do we stop this? It's up to somebody to try to make a play to make something good happen. I saw Banks talking smack to the receivers as he was out there covering them. Oh, you ain't getting anything today. They might come, but they're not coming over here. I saw Hawkins coming up, and he made a play on Cook, although it was a first down. He gets up, he's drilled him into the ground. He's chirping. I saw Nacho out there. He's chirping. Even Captain Dance when they were like behind by almost 20 points. You have guys fighting and holding up spirit and everything. But when you're dancing after you get a play stop for a loss, and you're down 20 points, your teammates like, hey man, stop dancing, get back in the huddle. Let's go. When they're telling you that, they're taking away from you the energy you have in the game as well. You have to all be in it together. You have to all be on the same accord. You have to all keep playing. But I understand where they were, have been on the receiving end of some of those, have been on the on the end where you give them that to someone. It is hard to do. And to sit here and to say, like, hey, they can't or they should, they're not robots. They're just not. And I'm telling you right now, the thing that worried me most about the start of the season, the first night's a Sunday night game. If it goes well, that's bad. If it goes great, if it goes bad, that's bad because it's not your regular schedule. And the first 3 out of 4 games are night games.
Sure. Yeah. And you got a quick turnaround with a Thursday game as well. Let's not forget they are staying out on the West Coast, but you're right. It's not a conventional setup right out of the gates. And then soon after that, they're going to play the Buffalo Bills. That'll be another primetime game. Whereas then things will start to settle down in the second half. There's no doubt about that. That's why, I mean, Howard, you're players of routine. When you start messing with the routine, that obviously impacts the output on the field.
And I think people like overlook that a little bit. Now, the thing that, like I said, the thing that's probably most unnerving to me is that they put out, well, they don't have tape anymore. They put on tape that you could pressure them without doing a lot of exotic stuff. So guys are going to try that. Maybe that's going to be maybe their benefit for a week or two as they go to Arizona and they go to San Francisco. But you lose Michael Parsons at Dallas, but you gain a Bosa when you get to San Francisco and a whole host of other great defensive players. So they have a chance in Arizona to try to right the ship. But on a short week, you got San Francisco.
Howard, you used the phrase just now. You used the term putting something. You see stuff on tape. So let me ask you this. Last night was a disaster. And, when people always say we're going to have to go look at the film, we're going to have to go look at the tape. And I'm wondering, I'm saying to myself, and I was thinking about this driving home. As a coach, do I want my team sitting together and looking at this tape? Or do I want to basically, listen, I got to look at it. Maybe an individual player can look at it. But do I want what is that? It's post-mortem. Do I want my entire team looking at this to see how we were embarrassed, or just burn it and let's move forward because we're not this bad? Maybe we're not as good as we think we are yet, but we're not this bad. It's an aberration. Let's move forward. Or do you go and pick it apart and point to this guy, and this guy?
First things first, I think they're victims of their success from last year. I think all the pats on the back, all the media, like, oh, we're gonna have a better season. We got a better roster. We're so good. I was even chirping of how good Joe Shane and those guys have done building the roster, and the roster is a lot better. It is, but they've heard that the entire offseason. Coach Dayball has said the entire time, last year is last year. It's a whole new year. So now they're a victim. They got victimized by the thing that he's been telling them the whole time. So yes, you want to put that tape on. You want to put that tape on. You want to show a couple plays from when they played against Tennessee and they all of a sudden magically won the game. And then you turn it over and says, okay, that was your feeling last year. This year feeling this year. What have I been saying to you the entire time? Every season's a different season. Every game's a different game. That one game at a time thing is a real thing. Now let's look at what you did wrong. And you can start talking about, what were you thinking here? What were you thinking here? This is what I asked you to do. This is what happened. And there's going to be a lot of that. You have to learn, like, that's a lot. Same thing I tell kids all the time. Winning does not teach you a lot. Losing does. Right? And a beat down teaches you a whole lot. So you start thinking, my mom used to say, you can't learn to fight until you get beat up.
Yeah,
So they
you know,
got beat up. So now it's time to fight.
your old coach, Parcells used to say, "Hey, it's easy, being winning 36-0 or winning 4 games in a row. Hang a 36-0 the opposite way or lose 4 in a row, and then you're going to find out a lot about character and what people are made of. Now, God forbid they lose 4 in a row, but they just lost 1 in a row, and it was a bad one. So they got to regroup, but they got to regroup in a hurry because all of a sudden, Arizona kind of looks like a must-win situation because, as you say, Howard, 4 days later, they're playing the Niners in Frisco.
Just like Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the mouth. Yep. And now that they've had these wonderful plans put together, they got really punched in the mouth and the head, in the ear, in the gut. They got punched everywhere. So now it's time. Okay, it's not even a regroup. It's like, okay, here's what we got. Here now that you've seen this, we know what we were doing wrong. We know that we're going to see this a lot more. So let's start trying to figure out how to prevent this from happening again. Because teams are going to do, again, everybody doesn't have a Michael Parsons, but there are Bosa's out there and other great players. They're going to be coming off the edge. And if you have to focus all of your attention to that one guy because you're worried about what he's going to do, all the rest of the guys are going to feast. So they got this week with Arizona, who doesn't have a Bosa on their team, to try to get, let's block the front 7 over and over and over again. Let's take advantage of them. Then
the Torrance. No, go ahead, Howard. Yeah.
Then 4 days later, they'll have to come up with a different plan, and hopefully they've already scouted it out. I know they have. That's what coaches do, for what they're going to do against this group.
To your point, guys like Dorrance Armstrong, DeMarcus Lawrence capitalized because of Micah Parsons' presence, whereas the Giants, they're hoping for the same thing. If Dexter Lawrence draws attention, that guys like Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari can feast as a result. Unfortunately, we didn't see any of that in the Sunday opener. With respect to what you were talking about bouncing back and putting last season behind them, few things come to note. Number one, the Giants only lost back-to-back games once last season, which just goes to show you dealing with adversity like this wasn't something that they were exposed to, I would argue, as much last season. Number two, and this brings us to the turnovers, which was another huge storyline in Sunday night's game. You take into consideration last season, the Giants did not give up a defensive score to the opposition or a special teams touchdown. And Russ, this is a Cowboys team. They scored with all 3 facets of their team. I mean, that's the ideal formula, right, to win football games. But I think that was a product of, and here's where the differentiation between both teams still exists, the speed. It felt as if Dallas was playing at one speed and the Giants were on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Whether it be Trevon Diggs' hit on Barkley, bang, bang play for the pick 6, the block where you had Wanye Thomas jump over the line to get that hustle play going.
Is that even legal, by the way?
Timing. That's absolutely. It is absolutely legal in terms of timing.
Jump over the line. He puts his hands on somebody and jumps over the line. That's legal.
Well, as long as you're not making contact with the center, the individual that snaps the ball.
So you can jump over the edges of the line. That's really okay. Yep. Interesting.
The little tricks of the trade. I mean, you could fill us in what happened in the late 80s and early 90s, but maybe we'll save that for a later edition of
late 80s, early
Giants
90s.
Hangout.
They would have been cut to the ground and not gotten up.
But Russ, getting back to the point about speed, that to me was extremely noticeable, the differential between both teams on Sunday night.
Well, which kind of, brings us to the next question. And I'm sure it's going to be all over, if it's not already, all over talk radio, all over Twitter or X, whatever the hell you want to call it, the disparity between the Giants, the Cowboys, and the Eagles. Now, I refuse to believe that last night's 40-0 thrashing is typical of the disparity between the Cowboys and Giants. I certainly believe the Giants are a better football team than that. I just, in my heart, I know they are. But that's going to be the discussion. Now, here we go. If we're going to try and win the NFC East, how the hell are we going to do it? And this, people are going to be talking about this if there's such a disparity between the Giants, Cowboys, Giants, and Eagles. You tell me, Howard, on a situation like that, do you think, okay, there might be a disparity, but it can't be as wide as we got to see last night?
I don't think it's a big disparity as people are saying. I think that the Cowboys were beneficiaries of a lot of just crazy mistakes. Again, the false start. Okay, false start happens. They're still in field goal range. They can still make a play. The ball dribbling back because it's wet. He couldn't even get it off the ground. He tried to snap it. It slid back to the quarterback. That's a mistake. Probably not going to happen again. Then the block kick, him jumping over the edge. That'll be addressed. That's never going to happen again. Those are three things that happen in the first part of that game that makes the game kind of tumble out of control. Now you're back. You received a punt or a kickoff, or you're down in your section. Everybody's out. Saquon's out on the edge. All the receivers are quote unquote covered, but he's throwing the ball on the check down. Why? Because there are four guys bearing down on him. That's why he's throwing it to Saquon. He can't look upfield. He can't see who's coming open, who's not coming open. He's trying to get the ball out of his hands as quickly as possible to keep positive plays. That hit on Saquon probably is not going to happen, because if he throws it, he's going to throw it way earlier, because that's a click, click. I got time to see who I got to see. Saquon gets it. Let's move forward. He's not going to be like almost running and throwing it to him, we hope, because they're going to block a little bit better. That won't happen. You're not going to see, as you go into the game later, every time he drops back. He got hit over 20 times last night. And everybody says, well, there was 7 sacks. There was more than 7 sacks. There were like 9 or 10 sacks, and 3 of those got called back because of defensive holding or defensive illegal contact down the field. They were hitting. The defense was actually jumping off sides and hitting the quarterback. And finally, about the last time they did it, they're like, oh, dude, like, you can't leave that early. I was laughing. I'm like, they're leaving a little early. That's why Big Thomas jumps back early to try to prevent them, because they're leaving early. It's just, hey, can we get the snap? There's going to be things where you're going to quote unquote change the snap count, so they can't jump early. You're going to hut instead of just going hut and send the ball off, or you're going to go quick snap so before they get ready. There are going to be a lot of things they're going to do to disrupt the rush. So yeah, everything's going to change. It's not going to be the same thing. Now, if they play like this for the rest of the season, they'll have the first pick in the draft.
Well, yeah, we know that. I can't believe in my wildest dreams. Yeah, I can't believe that would happen.
They will get rid of every player on the team before they surrender a season like that. This is not the same kind of group that we've seen in the past. They're out scouring the countryside now, looking for whatever position they thought they had the most trouble with. We've been talking about offensive line the entire game. There will be some big guys walking around, the facility that weren't there before. If they have another bad game, that's just the nature of how this organization is going to work in.
Well, what was discouraging or disappointing, maybe I should say, or both, there's been a lot of, anybody who's watched this team all through training camp, there's been a lot of improvement of the receiving core. Everybody, certainly myself, thinking that, wow, all of a sudden Daniel Jones has an aerial attack. He's got some ammo and ammunition. But when your offensive line can't do the job and you have no time to throw, then it's like, it's waste. You know what they say, it's wasted talent. That's what it is. If you can't throw to them, what's the good of having them? I mean, the offensive line is going to be under a lot of pressure to get this straightened out in a hurry.
Yeah, well, we've been knowing that for a while. We see Andrew Thomas improve to where he's a Pro Bowler, and we're hoping the other guys improve. Evan Neal, he's going to have to pick it up drastically. And he's a Bama guy, and I love him to death. But if he doesn't drastically pick it up, one of the people to be walking through the door will be looking at him. Matt Pert got into the game. He played okay. He didn't like give up sacks. Now, it wasn't Michael Parsons going against him, but he slowed his side down. When he goes out, Azul goes into the game. Azul, they didn't blow by him every play. That's what they're going to be circling on the tape and go, hey, look, I just want to let you guys know, this guy comes in, he plays guard. Now, well, he wasn't going against, but it doesn't matter who he's going against. He's holding them out. There's no penalties late in the game when these two guys started to get in, and the theme kind of changed. Now, that's something that Evan Neal's going to have to address. Inside, I don't know what they're going to do. You know, I thought Bredesen played pretty good for most of the game, but the other guard, sometimes yes, sometimes no. I thought John Michael Smith played pretty well during the game, except for the bad snap. They had some good moments, but they had the overwhelming bad moments. You know, when three guys are in the backfield at the same time. If you're blocking, like you're doubling down trying to stop their quote unquote best pass rusher, you don't even look at the guy that's standing behind them to come in. There were plays when they were running where they were trying to get outside zone runs where I know that the tackle or the guard is supposed to pull up to the second level to get to someone. They would just swim over guys that were standing on the line of scrimmage to get to the guy they're supposed to block. You never run past the guy when you're blocking to get to another guy. Always block the guy in front of you, because if you stop him, maybe the guy behind him will trip over him as you're trying to get up the field. But if you don't block the guy that's right in front of you, he's usually the guy that makes the play. So I saw all that kind of stuff happening last night.
And what teams are going to do moving forward, and you were alluding to this earlier, Howard, is they're going to find the offensive linemen that can't win those one-on-one battles, and they're going to line up their best pass rushers alongside them to see whether or not they can handle that. Because Arizona may not have the same firepower of Dallas, of course, but they still will find one guy in particular who they think can be disruptive and do damage. And see, that's where, Howard, regardless of if this loss is not as bad as it looks and a win is not as good as it looks, I still think there is a differential between the Cowboys and the Eagles in what they bring to the trenches versus what the Giants do. And as Russ brought up, you can have all the bells and whistles you want, right? I mean, we could talk about Darren Waller and Jalen Hyatt and speed. If you can't handle your business with respect to the infrastructure of your house, it doesn't matter how flashy all those toys are, because you're not going to be able to capitalize on them at the end of the day. And that's where Dallas and Philadelphia can, to me, neutralize what the Giants present, specifically on the offensive side of the ball.
I like that you keep going to that, but did you watch it? Did you get to see any of the Philadelphia New England game? Bill Belichick basically shut down Philadelphia's offense
in the second half and in the second quarter. I would say there was no first quarter wasn't as smooth as it could have been.
Yeah, but he really got after him. So it's not like this thing where you're looking at it. I keep telling everyone, I'm like, teams are what they are the day that they play. Like if the Giants go, you know, we're all hoping on a 4-game winning streak. We'll all be sitting here every morning after the game bragging about how well the team's doing. It's not reality. You just don't know what's going to happen. I don't think Arizona has that big time player. I think that the game plan is going to be, okay, let's try to formulate some things that we're going to do well to build for the game against the Niners. They're going to run the ball right at Arizona. The defense is going to not bring every living soul to try to get to the quarterback. He's going to go, okay, guys, I need somebody to get to the quarterback. And he's going to focus on trying to stop their run. He's going to try to make them one-dimensional. They're going to go back to some stuff that they know they can get done. Okay, it'll be a tough game, but they might win by 2 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns, but it'll still be a tough game because they're going to be working through all the bad taste that they got put in their mouth from this Dallas game. The following game and the next 2 games after that, that's where they're going to have to figure it out. But they got a chance now to make it up. They have a chance now to like, okay, go look at it. You got a week of practice. Let's see who's hurt, who's not hurt. Hopefully guys are healthy enough to go forward. Like I said, I've been talking about Thomas with the hamstring. You know, they were retaping Evan Neal's ankle during the game. So if it wasn't he was struggling enough, if they're taping his ankle on the sideline and spatting his ankle because he's got a little tweak, that's just not the kind of things you want from the 2 guys that are on the outside. You need everybody playing if you can possibly get it.
Boy, if anybody didn't understand how important momentum is in sports and how quickly it can come and how quickly it can go, I thought you were talking about it, how that first drive, Giants moved down from the 25 to their 8. It's 3rd and 2. Looks like they're ready to, get a first down and maybe take it in or what have you. And just momentum changed on a 3rd and 2 false start. That's when it changed. And you could see all of a sudden Dallas was ready to give up points. And then all of a sudden they're rocking and rolling with the lead. And then, boy, it snowballs in a hurry. It's like in baseball, they say, momentum and what is only as good as the next day's starting pitcher. And you hear coaches, especially, Dable and Joe Shane, his boss, likes to say, we're just worried about the next game. We're worried about the next play. And if that was ever an example of being true, it was true last night on that 3rd and 2 situation. Subsequently, then a bad snap, blocked field goal, and that was really all she wrote.
Yeah, like I said, in the next series, they get stopped twice running the ball. And I'm sure like the first series when they're running down the field and they're doing everything and everybody's all excited because they're moving the ball and they're trying to throw the ball and Daniel has to run. That's the thing that we're not thinking about. He has to run. They're getting through. The line is leaking everywhere. He has to run, and now he's running, and he's getting yards. They're taking shots at him. He's a tough kid, but everybody's like, okay, force him to run and take a couple shots at him. You're going to be able to get to him eventually. The momentum was on the Giants side, but the Dallas was being very effective in their pass rush because we never put the ball in the air. No matter what we were trying to do, no matter who we were blocking, no matter how they were setting it up, Daniel was like, out the right side, no, there's no time. Out the left side, there's no time. When you get the ball all the way down to the 3rd and 2, they are fumbling the ball because why? They false start. Why? Because they haven't stopped him on any pass rush yet, and Daniels had to run the entire time. That's why Thomas is jumping early. He's trying to, okay, I'm going to stop this guy at least. I'm going to try to stop this guy at least. That's the untold story that when you're watching the game, you don't really, if you don't know what you're looking for, you can't tell. They were under siege from the moment the game started. They just was fortunate to be able to run the ball down the field. And at that point, if it's me and I'm thinking about it, I'm like, just run it again. That's what I kept doing. Just keep running it, making money, keep running it, make them have to play.
Well, but that's why I brought up, kind of when we started the show today, Daniel Jones being left in the game. And Brian Dable, to his credit, said, I was just trying to make something happen. And I would also say this about Dave's, that, one thing about him, he's got some Parcells in him, and he doesn't coach scared, and he's not ever worried about the criticism. So, but had, God forbid, Daniel been hurt, they would have been roasting and toasting Dave's today. Now, he wasn't worried about it, but, again, like you say, he was under siege. Under siege is the way to describe what was going on with Daniel yesterday. And the fact that he was left in the game was, scary to me. Believe me, I'm Dave's biggest fan, but that was scary to me.
But this is what I think. And I understand from fans and I hope he doesn't get hurt and all that great stuff. This is what I think. My quarterback wants to fight to the bitter end. He's not trying to get to the sideline. He's not saying this thing is lost. He goes, we're going to try to make something positive happen. Okay, coach, what do you want me to do? So for the rest of the offense who wasn't protecting him, they're going to see that guy getting hit, him getting up and going right back in. It was unfortunately for him, it was like an Eli-esque type moment when Eli used to get beat down, but kept going back in. Not complaining about the offensive line, not complaining about the play calling, but just saying like, hey, we got to do better as a team. I got to do better. I got to keep bringing this back. I got to find a way. The players that are around you respect you, and they want to work harder to make sure that never happens to you again.
Yeah, no, believe me, Howard, I'm on the same page with that, but I'll just liken it to a fighter and a trainer. Sometimes the trainer has to say to the fighter, listen, pal, it ain't your day. I'm stopping the fight. I got to protect you from you because you have too much courage. And today, we throw in the tank.
Yeah, I respect all of that, but at the same time, I can remember playing, I played through everything. And the world's different, and everybody wants to protect everybody, and I get it. We got to protect ourselves, protect the player from themselves. If you pull that guy out, you surrendered. Up to that lives, Russ?
Pardon me?
Oh, you were froze for a second. I said, if you pull that guy out, you signal the surrender. You never want to signal the surrender.
I get that. I understand what you're saying, and I'm glad. Let's put it this way: I'm glad he wasn't hurt because if he was hurt, we'd have a whole different discussion this morning. But to me, there's two ways you can look at it. And I do get it. He's a leader. He's a tough kid. He's the leader of that team. Make no mistake about it. No ifs, ands, or buts. Daniel Jones is the leader of that team. But man, he was running for his life last night. Took a licking.
Yeah, and I think again, if you look at the stats late in the game, late third, early fourth, whatever, they were still rushing for over 6 yards a carry. I'll keep going back to that. That was a positive thing that they had going on. That didn't seem to be a theme so much as to, we got to figure out how to get this offense going. Like, it's not going, run it.
Though I think that was more maybe of a product of that early down success on that first drive, Howard, more so than maybe the totality of the game, because they finished with, I believe, in the territory of under 4 yards per carry. So the numbers really balanced out in the end. I agree with you. I mean, that was maybe the one positive element. There's no doubt about it. But I think it may have been, once again, a product of how effective they were on that opening drive as opposed to truly what we saw throughout the duration of the game. And I think
they moved the ball really well on the ground throughout the game. I think that towards the end of the game, it wasn't as good because they had to throw the ball. And then the runs were like, he scrambles for one. Like, when the design quarterback runs don't work late in the game because everybody's trying to tackle the quarterback.
Flow and circumstance. Sure. Yeah. No, there's no doubt about that. With respect to Daniel Jones, what you two were talking about, I think it's a product of who he is, his personality. I mean, you could tell he's going to do everything he can. He's going to leave it all on the line. But I think what Russ may have been bringing up, Howard, is, and the second interception to me is an example of this. Sometimes he tries to go above and beyond, and he winds up, I think, hurting himself because he's trying to put that superhero cape on, as I like to call it, where maybe the wise thing is throw the ball away, take the sack, live to see another down. When he was running towards the sideline, I'm talking about the play where he threw and Stephon Gilmore, who made a great grab, but hindsight, of course, is 20/20 for anybody. And he admitted this in his post-game presser. The logical move there is throw the ball away. Why even try to do something to make something out of nothing under those circumstances, given the play is pretty much over with Micah Parsons chasing it down from one sideline to the other?
Yeah, at that juncture, you know what? I don't even think, Lance, he was trying to put his cape on. I think he just wanted to make a play, try to make something positive happen, which obviously went the exact opposite way.
But you got to make sure that, when you get back to the huddle, and I'm sure he's talking to his guys, but when you come back to the huddle, like, hey, look, we're in this together. Like, I need somebody to step up and fight with me. And that's kind of the mentality. You every once in a while, you'll get somebody that'll say that, or you'll find someone that will do that from a quarterback position. But when he's trying to make a play and he's going out and he's like basically begging for your guy to live above the numbers a little bit, come back to the ball, do your moment, and it doesn't happen, and then he's just taking a beating from that point on. But like, there have been games like in the history of I've been in games where coaches said like, oh man, these guys are so good, we got to do this. I'm like, coach, just run the ball at them. Like, what? Like, just run the ball right at them. I'll take care of them. Don't worry about it. I played in games. I played against Reggie White where the tackle was getting beaten. I won't say which tackle over history. And he was like really upset. I'm like, just turn to protection. I'll block him. And like, you have to have that kind of thing in your body that makes you want to do that for your QB, for your running back, for your DBs or whoever. If you don't get it, someone's going to have to do it. Someone's going to have to step up and get to it. And it's going to be, it can't be false bravado. It can't be whatever. Daniel's a quiet soul. He's going to lead by example and be tough, and they're going to see him getting ready to take his shower. When he takes off his jersey, all the bruises and batters, they're like, holy smokes. Somebody that should make someone angry. And like, that will never happen to that guy again. But, we'll see. Like, maybe I'm living in a romantic era of sports. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, time will tell, because they're going to have their next game, and they're going to have to go out on the West Coast against the Cardinals and regroup quickly, because I think, as Brian Dable mentioned, and this sums it up beautifully, this game can humble you very quickly. in terms of life in the National Football League. And we will leave it at that, as this is the first ever edition of the Giants Hangout. We'll be with you after each and every game all season long. We'll have a few guests along the way as we break down different themes and elements from each contest. Russ Salzberg, Howard Cross, Lance Meadow with you. You can check it out on Giants.com, the mobile app, and your favorite podcast platforms. We'll speak to you next week following week 2 against the Arizona Cardinals. Have a good one.